Hi, Derek. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Hi, Jennifer. Always a pleasure to see you and definitely have some time with you.
Yeah. Derek Negron is the co-founder of the Light Preparatory Academy. Did I pronounce your last name right?
That is correct.
Okay. I speak Spanish, so I wanted to say Negron, but I don't know if
There
that's
you go. That
Negron.
works. That's what it has
Okay,
its work.
perfect.
Yep.
All right, okay. So Derek is the co-founder of the Light Preparatory Academy. The Light Prep Academy is the first and only, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I saw, the first and only Montessori stream school in Miami-Dade County. Science, technology, reading, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
That is
You
correct.
teach kids age, all right, you teach kids ages 3 to 6. Um, I love that it's Montessori. I think I told you this that both of my kids went to a Montessori school from pre-K 3 up to 8th grade. So huge Montessori fan here. I feel like it allowed them to just really explore and blow up their love for learning, their creativity, and just their overall success in school. And I've just seen how it's helped them to blossom. You and I met through the Miami Foundation, where you and your amazing Saltwater fellows are learning and growing together so that, you can keep being the amazing people that you're being for the folks in our community. And I facilitated a workshop on personal branding and vocal empowerment. And you really rocked it when you were declaring your expertise, owning that expertise and declaring it. So, again, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm just going to jump right in.
Sure. Thank you.
So, Leaders Talk Communications is all about highlighting how leaders are managing communications at their company, their nonprofit, their school, so that other leaders can learn from you and glean from what you're doing. Like most leaders, you're engaging with a lot of different kinds of folks, probably.
Mhm.
And so we're going to chat about that. But first, tell me about your work as co-founder at the Light Preparatory Academy, and what inspires you most about what you do?
Sure. Wonderful. Again, thank you so much for having me on to be a part of this discussion. The short of that story is my wife and I have both been educators over the last two
Mhm.
decades in South Florida. And one of the things that we've noticed from many students that we've encountered and had the privilege to teach and lead is really the need for them to have an early start. Sitting on the floor of
Mm.
our own living room in the beginning of a pandemic provided an opportunity that we didn't understand at that time. With our own
Mm.
children, Carter and Dylan being very young at that time and being responsible for their learning, as so many parents were at that time.
Yeah. How
We
old were they?
They were at that time 1 and 4. They're
Oh,
3 years.
wow.
Yeah, 1 and 4. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I noticed is that working with them through that time, that they blossomed, right? And then this is
Mm.
where most students, unfortunately, not just in our local area, but across the country, even the world, they really saw a setback in learning. Our students really grew. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
More
they had
than
educators as parents
well,
too. So
that's probably a help.
a
But
little bit.
what we learned though is that with the right attention, the right frequency, the right dose, the right skills being provided to kids at that time, that they're sponges, right? And the research supports that
Mhm.
students between the ages of 0 and 5, that's when their brains are primed to really learn new things and build those synapses and connections that they need in their brains to fire at all cylinders. So we ask ourselves the simple
Yeah.
question: if it's good enough for our kids, then it's good enough for all kids. And that was the
Mm.
genesis of
Yeah.
something that was really dear to us and helping our students, our kids, to have a fast start and a strong start. And we believe that we could do that, then the sky's the limit.
Wow. There is something special about the fact that you and your wife said, if our kids, why not others?
Right.
Um, What is it you think that inspired that spark? Because you could have very easily have just, continued to teach your own kids until they went back to school. Like, what is it that you think sparked, like, we need to do this for others?
Yeah, I think it comes from a heart to serve. We've served in the general area, the same area for over 17 years, and we've seen the need, and we thought that this was just a really big part and a piece to the puzzle. And
Mhm,
we felt like
mhm.
if kids had the opportunity to start, and it was just bigger than ours, right? When we talk about our community being prosperous, it's not about just us, right? It's about everybody.
Yeah.
At the core of that, I'll say we know my wife and I share a calling and a responsibility to build strong communities, and we've committed our lives to
Mm,
that. And this was just
yeah.
another part of what we found to be important in terms of being able to serve our community.
Oh, I love that. So you already had the spark to serve
Oh,
within you,
yes,
within both of you. And then this opportunity presented itself, and you're just like, why not? Right.
right,
And
exactly.
what's most inspirational for you about what you're doing every day now?
Most inspirational would be how the families are prospering. Uh,
Oh,
one
yeah.
one part
And what?
that one part that I think is often not spoken about is that it's not just the kids that deserve an opportunity to be successful, but often the parents, right, who have sacrificed
Mhm.
and perhaps given up on some of the dreams that they've had for
Yeah.
the purposes of taking care of their children, rightfully so, and being able to provide and support them and encourage them to pick those dreams back up, to dream again, to really have hope that the thing that they saw when they were children that they wanted to do is still very possible. And we've seen
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
come out of again the school where parents are reigniting those dreams and really committing. If my child is learning, then I can also too learn and prosper with my child. So that's probably
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
yeah.
So parents are being inspired by their kids.
Oh yes,
So you're saying they're being inspired to further their own education or to
oh
learn more?
yes. Further their
What?
own education. We've seen a couple
That
of
makes me
them
want to
actually start
cry.
start businesses, go
What?
back to school. Law enforcement academy. There are several stories that have come out, and we know it's because of what they see in their own kids, and again, providing them the support
Yeah,
that's needed for
yeah.
the whole family and not just the child.
Okay. So, you mentioned parents. We know you've got kids as stakeholders. Talk to me a bit about the different stakeholders that you're communicating with in your role as administrator and executive of the school, and where you feel you in particular thrive in communicating with those different stakeholders.
Yeah, well, I first have to give kudos to my wife because she's the person on site that is the administrator for the day-to-day operation.
Ah, okay.
My role,
Uh-huh.
my role as the co-founder and board member is really to engage stakeholders that are in the community that might not know
Mm,
about the great work that's being done or may not know about the importance of education for students that are starting at ages 2. I think that's
okay.
a big part of it, and how that message is being sent is also very important. And I think, with dealing in the world of education, sometimes there are narratives that have been built that you have to work
Mhm.
to deconstruct in order to provide the right education and the right information. So those
Yeah.
stakeholders, can include, of course, the parents, community businesses, organizations, other nonprofit organizations that do
Mhm.
something similar in this space of
Partnerships.
learning of course. And of course,
Yeah.
your community and elected officials in the community and the like. I think it's important that all stakeholders are receiving the same message and that message
Yeah.
is clear.
And so where do you feel you thrive? What's the Derek sweet spot, and that helps you communicate effectively with those folks?
Well, I am a natural introvert.
Hmm.
And
I
what
see
I,
that.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
probably pick that up pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
what I think the strong suit to that and the advantage there is it allows me to run in the lane where I feel more comfortable, which is having one-on-one conversations. And that's
Yeah.
been in any
Ah.
leadership role that I've had. Actually, one of my strengths is a relator, a person that can build relationships. So they're usually people who are strong in this particular area. They are more interested in genuine, strong relationships that are meaningful as opposed to knowing everybody. You're
Mm.
focusing on the few people that you know and really strengthening those ties and bonds. So my
Yeah,
spot
yeah,
is having conversations like I'm having with you today that are a little
yeah.
bit more intimate as opposed to in a room with 1,000 people and I'm bouncing around from person to person. I'm
Right.
more likely to take things slow and have conversations and build relationships that are meaningful.
That's wonderful. That speaks to the fact that you know yourself.
Mhm.
We tend to glorify extroverts in our society, and there is such strength in introversion as well. And the fact that you understand that that's your sweet spot and that you're using that as a strategy to support the school, I think is wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so tell me about, we all have the stuff that comes up, those challenging times when we may not be as great at communicating as we would like, especially as leaders, leaders managing staff, leaders managing multiple stakeholders. What's a number one communications challenge that you can think of for yourself that you faced as a leader, and how did you handle it, Derek?
Oh, wow. I have several. I think I can start this by saying one of the biggest misconceptions with communication is that people understood what you said, well, at least what you thought you said. For
Mm.
me, I think one of the bigger lessons that reminds me most about communication is really about how I communicate what I value as a leader. I think, and this
Mm.
is probably a little bit unorthodox, but I think at the core of every single leader, like the people that you are working with and leading, they always want to know what is it that this person is about? What do they value? What wakes them up?
Mhm.
What makes them want to do this work? And I recall again early in my leadership journey, I was working in the school at that time, and my task and assignment was to help the school to grow very quickly in might have been 5 or 6 months. And at
Oh,
the
wow.
core, my value is one of my values is prosperity, right? And for me, that
Mm.
means that people are successful doing the thing that they were called to do, or the thing that are assigned to do at that particular time. And I
Mhm.
was running 100 miles an hour, trying to get things done, initiatives off the ground, and really feeling like I was really trying to motivate and help people to move in the direction that I thought we were all moving in. And someone stopped me one day and said, "You know what? People are perceiving what you're doing as being very insensitive, very cold.
Whoa.
It's turning people off." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like I'm working hard. I'm trying to make sure everybody's doing well." And I took a step back and I said, "You know what? I failed to do, number one, is I failed to communicate what I value, so
Mhm,
that when you
mhm.
see certain behaviors, you'll be able to align those behaviors, or at least what my intentions are, with what I
Yeah,
value, right? So if you knew that I valued the total prosperity of this organization and every individual there, then you know why I do the things I do and why I move the way that I move. But the way that it was communicated is that I preferred the prize over the people. And often
ooh,
in leadership,
mm,
we
yeah,
want the prize so bad that we often forget that the people are the ones that get it done. So my
right,
point is
right,
how I communicated as a leader, what I said out of my mouth and my actions, there was misalignment there. And it started with me not having a very easy and clear conversation. Like, these are the things that I think are important. And what are some things that you think are important? What are some things that you value, those non negotiables in your life? But if there's not a conversation there, I can move in a certain direction and it can turn you off because you don't
yeah,
know why I do what I do. Right. So
yeah, yeah.
communicating those values are extremely important. And it just came up again this other day. I celebrated my birthday recently. My daughter, who's
Oh,
6,
happy birthday.
so much. My daughter, who's 6, gave me a card that she picked out at the store. And one of the lines in the card is that I've learned so many things from you, how hard you work, how to never quit. But the thing that I really admire about you is the values that you taught me. And I went
Mm,
back to that word again and I said, if my daughter, who is 6, can communicate what I value, hopefully I've learned the lesson that I didn't get many years ago.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think just for me, that's always a refresher as a leader that, you don't want to get far away from the people and not having those conversations about what's important. And again, for me, I think it always starts with what was it that you value, and then what do the people with you value, and how can you work together? And if there's miscommunication there, it makes the work really hard.
It does. That misalignment, I mean, you can't motivate people, you can't inspire people. The core values that you hold as an individual and as an organization are so important. And just from a communications perspective, like I always tell people, like your core values are the well from which all your great stories can spring. And
Oh yeah,
so if you're ensuring that those values are not only communicated, but that they are also backed up by tangible evidence, like, we've got this policy, the system, this practice, this
hmm,
process that supports that value, it makes
right.
it even easier for folks to like come along with you, for
Oh yeah, they
those
trust
different
you. They,
stakeholders that, yeah, they trust you, those different stakeholders to align with those values and to know what you stand for and what you don't stand for,
right,
right?
exactly. Yes.
That's great. So what has been the most successful vehicle that's allowed you to communicate with your different stakeholders? What do you think has worked really, really well for you as co-CEO, as co-founder?
Co-founder, as well, again, it goes back to what I mentioned before, the relationships. I think that's been
Mm,
most important. We've looked at different attempts of marketing and campaigns and all of those things, and it comes back to, and all those things are important, and I think if you do them well, you can see great success. But
yeah,
I feel like there's nothing like a strong relationship. When
yeah,
people can speak on your behalf for the work that's being done, because they've experienced it, that carries a lot more weight than me posting something online for people that don't know who I am or who we are.
yeah.
So the
Or
relate,
you could post online what the people are saying who really know you and value you
there
and
you
use
go,
those
right?
as
And
testimonials, right?
exactly, and that's something that the school has done for sure. But
Yeah,
again, it
yeah,
goes back to the relationships and the word of mouth from the people that are a part of what's being done. That's transformational. That just carries a different type of weight. So I think that
yeah.
for me, that's always been the go to. It continues to be the go to. Just having
Nurturing those
strong relationships.
relationships and strengthening them. What's
Absolutely.
what's one thing you do like to share with other leaders? Like what's one thing you do to nurture relationships? Like in a practical, like day-to-day, do you call people once a week? Do you have like a certain list? Do you make sure you email? Like what does that look like?
Yeah,
One
that's a
one
great
example.
question. And that's one of the areas as your, I guess, network of people that you come in contact with grows, it appears to become more difficult. For me, it's again, I won't be the person that may have 1,000 friends, right? But the few that I have, I hold very dear. And I think
Mhm.
at the core of it, if I had to name one thing, it's asking yourself the simple question: how much do I really value people? And when you
Yeah.
value people, it's easier to ask the questions that are important, to really be curious about how they're doing, what they're doing. And I believe this, over time, it's kind of like putting a penny in a jar. When kids, we had, these different type of big jugs we would use to save money, right? It's like putting a
Yeah.
penny in every single day, every single time you have a conversation with someone, and it eventually grows into something stronger for most people, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just being intentional and listening, right, is the other thing. You won't know what's going on with
Mm.
people if you're the one doing all the talking. I heard
Yeah.
Craig Groeschel say the other day, he's a great person in the leadership podcast space. He said the person that's doing the most talking is the one that's learning the least. So I keep that in my back
Exactly.
pocket, like how much am
Yeah.
I talking versus how much am I listening? When I'm listening, I'm learning about the person and what's
Yeah.
important to them, and I can relate to that person a little bit better because I'm understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah. So you're nurturing those relationships by asking people about themselves, by listening to what they say about themselves and being
Yeah,
being genuinely invested and interested. I
right. And
I love that.
showing up when it matters. Things will
Yeah.
happen for people that are unfortunate. There'll be some things to celebrate. And I think when you show up when it matters, it helps to know helps the person to know how significant they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So my last question, I love asking this question of every guest. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you want the world to know most about or to understand most deeply about you or the work that you're doing at the Light Preparatory Academy?
If I could wave a magic wand, I would want everyone to know how significant early childhood learning is and how
Mm-hmm.
much it impacts the overall success of every community. Right now,
Of the
we're
entire communities, not
entire
just,
community, and I'll give you an
yeah,
example. The number one reason that families are not working is because of the cost of their child going to school as early as a newborn, right? The cost of early childhood care. Those talented, very talented individuals that are forced to stay home because they can't afford it are also not participating in the job market, which means we're
mm,
losing out on their skills and talents. And if they're forced to
yeah,
stay home to take care of their child and they don't have the skill sets of a qualified, highly qualified educator, then perhaps that child is also missing out on their potential that they could be realizing. I think
yeah,
the storm of those two things, right, has greater implications for the parent right now and how they participate in the economy, and the child later down the line and how they may not be able to participate. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
if everyone
Mm.
understood how important early childhood learning is, then I think they would make more investments in that area.
That snowball effect of impact,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Derek, for your time today. Hold on a bit.
Yeah,
I want to keep talking to you after our conversation, but I
sure.
really appreciate you being with me today, and thank you so much for sharing your
Always a pleasure.
insights.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay.